everyone, this is Ellie Mae with Artesprix, and this video I'm going to share working with the Artesprix Wine Stopper. Let's go ahead and open this so you can see what it looks like exactly. So with the Artesprix Wine Stopper, you get the actual wine stopper blank, and then it has an adhesive square on it. The sublimation part of this, you actually get 4 of these little blanks that you are going to add your sublimation design to. There's 4 of them, so you have a chance that you could practice if you did not like your first design that shows up. I do want to mention that there is a protective covering on top of this. So you'll see a little message here that says remove film before transfer. You want to remove that film before you apply your sublimation design, or it's not going to sublimate correctly. These are silver on the back side. That's the side that it sticks down to your wine stopper. It is a double-sided wine stopper, so you have a chance for two different designs on it, or you can do one of the same design. White on the white side on here, that is where your protective film is, and you'll want to remove that. That is the side we are going to sublimate on. So let's take a look at the rest of the supplies that we have. For today's project, I'm going to be using a combination of the Artesprix Sublimation Markers with the bold chisel tip and the basic fine tip colors. I just pulled both of those out so that I had options and selection of what I wanted to use for my design. You're going to need the Artesprix heat tape. This is specialized tape to withstand the high heat when you're working with sublimation. One of the most important parts is your protective paper. This is siliconized paper that is going to protect your workspace when you are using the high heat. You do not want to get the sublimation ink when it transfers onto your heat source. So you want to protect your bottom platen and the top platen when you are working with sublimation inks. I'm also going to be using the Artesprix stamp block. You can use any slick surface for the technique that I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to use it kind of like a watercolor palette to work with some of the markers. You can just simply use the markers if that's what you prefer. Then a plain ordinary pencil. You do not want to use pen or marker. That could transfer to your blank, but pencil does not. So I'm going to be sketching a design. With an Artesprix sublimation product, you simply need a sheet of copy paper, plain ordinary paper. You do not need specialized paper. This is a higher quality paper. I'm going to use it for the next tips that I'm going to share with you about using the markers. I'm going to use this, but you can also use for things like watercolors, or if you're working with the paints, which are a little bit more liquid than the markers or the inks, then you could also use a mixed media paper or watercolor paper. Just plain paper. It doesn't need specialized sublimation paper for the Artesprix sublimation products. That includes the paints, the inks, the re-inkers, and the markers that they have. And then I also have my small protective mat that I've pulled out. When these blanks, they are metal. When they come off of the heat press is set for 385 degrees. I'm going to press for 45 seconds, and it's going to be extremely hot. This protective pad is one of my favorite things. I have both sizes of it because I use it so often. So I'm going to make sure that that is on my workspace. I'm going to set that over here by my heat press. And then you will need a heat source of some kind. 385 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 seconds. You can also use a home iron. You can find instructions on the Artesprix website for that. You just have to hold the iron in place for about 3 minutes, but it depends on the blank as well. I'm going to be using a watercolor technique with the design that I am going to try to do today. So I just have a couple paint brushes and some water. So let's go ahead and get started with this. I'm going to give you some tips first on using the markers. So first tip is that when you are storing your markers, you want your markers to be stored flat. I keep mine in my packages so I can designate which one is which, and you want to keep them stored flat. That is going to help the lifespan of your markers. This also applies for any other pens or markers that you have. The best way to keep them is to keep them flat. Prior to use, you want to set them upright so the tip is down about 20 minutes before you use them. Now that is also going to vary depending on how often you use them. So if you use them every single day, they may not need the full 20 minutes to get up to their flow capacity. And that's just to get the ink down into the tip of the pen since they are stored flat. The next tip I'm going to share with you is something I've learned through using the markers, and this would apply to other markers as well, is the marker colors that you're going to use. Grab a sheet of just copy paper. You can even use this for a future project if you wanted to, but take your markers, and it's just like an ordinary pen. We all know that some pens don't like to write right away when you start to use them. So just take it and get that ink flowing and kind of just scribble. And depending on what you're going to do, you may want to do a few shapes. So I'm going to use the black. I know I'm going to use the black. In each of the Artesprix Sublimation marker sets, the colors can vary a little bit. So depending on the colors that you would like, I'm going to take these. These are a chisel tip. The chisel tip here on the left side in my video, and on the fine tipper on the right side. So that just gives you, but you can see what color it is. Now, this is dark green, but it looks, if it comes through on the video, like it's blue. The colors will brighten and show their true colors once they are heat pressed. So the colors you see on your paper may not be the actual colors until it is finished and heat pressed, and we reveal that. So I'm just gonna do this for a couple of more markers and make sure. Now, if you wanted to, you could also make a design and use this. You could use this as a little mixed media background. I save all of mine. I'm just kind of like that. So let's see what other colors I might need. I'm going to use browns and just get these flowing here. And then the final tip I have for using your markers is just have fun. It is a simple sheet of copy paper, or in my case, it's mixed media paper. I just grabbed my smaller pad because I'm working with smaller size blanks, and just have fun with them. See what can happen. And if you don't like it, set it aside. Sometimes when you come back to it, you will like it even better than you did originally. So I'm just going to set this aside. My markers are flowing. Let's do a couple more here because I'm not sure which ones I want to use totally in my project. So, but you just want to make sure that they're going. And then this is going to give you a little bit better success when you go to do your designs, and you'll see those colors show up. So I'm just going to set that to the side. I'm going to take a sheet of my mixed media paper. Save that pad in case I don't like my design and I can do it again. I'm going to take this blank. I have not removed the protective cover. I will do that right before I add it to the sublimation, right before I heat press it. I'm going to take pencil and I'm going to draw around this blank. This is going to give me an idea of where my design can be placed. And I still have a lot of wiggle room. So if I color outside the line of my pencil mark, it's not going to show, it does not transfer. So if I color outside the line and I like that side of the design better, I can simply move that and shift it over. Now that I have my template drawn, you can use anything. You could freehand draw on this. You could use little tiny stamps if you were using the Artesprix stamp inks. I have an idea in my head. I am not an artist, but I did take a watercolor class recently, and this idea just popped into my head in the middle of the night. So I am simply going to sketch out this design. It is a wine stopper, so I'm going to kind of just draw out, but you could use stamps. So I'm going to draw out my design and speed this up while I do, and then we will come back for the next steps. Okay, so I've just drawn out a simple design. Now I have some wiggle room to work around with this. I am drawing in pencil. You technically don't need to even erase it. Pencil is not going to transfer to your sublimation blank. So it is a very easy thing to work with and very forgiving. If you didn't like it, you could simply just draw another template down here and start again. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of the markers and I'm going to give this a little bit of an outline, and then I'm going to take my paintbrush with a little bit of water. I'm going to pull some colors in and we're going to see how this will turn out. You do have 4 of these blanks within this project. So if you did decide that you didn't like the first 2 that you used, you could swap that out and try again. Again, you could use any sort of designs with this. You could completely freehand it with just a pattern design. Or you could use small stamps as well. So I'm going to go ahead and color this in, speed up the video, and we'll come back for the next step. Now I started with taking the markers. If you want bold colors or outlines, you want to use those markers directly onto the mixed media paper there. So I'm giving it some of the outlines, and then I'm going to take the marker and scribble it across my smooth surface. I'm using the Artesprix stamping block for that, and then I'm using it kind of like a paint palette. So I'm pulling water in and pulling some of that color, different colors. I used all kinds of different colors for this design. With the watercolor, it is going to be a little bit more muted color. If you wanted the big, bold, bright, vibrant, you would just want to use your markers on the entire thing. I like that it gives it a little bit of variance with the coloring. You can add more color in, you can give it a gradient, you can give some shading in there. And then finally I took a black marker and I just outlined several things on there and then just added some background colors in here. And every design you do is different. Just have fun. Okay, now once you have your design, whatever it turns out and looks like, you can decide that you want to make sure to let it dry. So if you are using the watercolor technique, or if you're using paints or inks, just make sure that it's dry before you go on to the next steps. Now, once it is dry, I'm going to grab a pair of scissors. That's one thing I forgot to have ready and available. So I'm just going to take this, I'm just going to cut it apart so it's easier to work with. And then you're going to take your white side of your blank. You want to peel the protective cover off. And sometimes this can be the hardest part of the entire process for any type of blank, is peeling protective coverings off. So once you do that, you're going to notice it's nice and shiny and bright, and you want to keep any debris off of that. So then I'm going to take this and the white side, I'm going to place it down where I want it on my piece of paper. I'm going to take heat tape and I'm going to secure this blank in place. And you do not want it to move or shift, so make sure it is very secure there. And I just might add another piece here because I got it off center, just so that there's something to hold on to there. So I'm going to take the next one. You can see on this one, if the camera will focus, it's kind of bubbly already. This one will be a little bit easier to remove, hopefully. Now that I said that, it probably won't. So I'm just using my fingernail, but you can carefully use a tool if that works for you. Remove that, and then we're going to place white side down on top of our blank, or on top of our paper, and secure that one again. And then we're going to do what's called a sublimation sandwich or a sublimation taco. Depends on if you place a sandwich layer bread or if you fold your paper over. Depending on your workspace, I can go ahead and I can press both of these at the same time. So what I'm going to do is do a sublimation sandwich. I'm going to roll out 2 sheets of this. This is the loudest part of the process. And I want the paper to cover my entire workspace so that the sublimation ink, when it transfers, does not transfer to my press. I'm going to place a sheet of sublimation paper on the bottom platen of my heat source. I'm going to take this and I'm going to flip it over so it is the blank and your paper is on top. I'm going to set that securely on my heat press surface, and I'm going to take my final layer of sublimation paper, or the protective paper, on top, and then I'm going to close the press and 45 seconds later we'll come back and we will reveal. I'm going to carefully release my heat press and just kind of let it settle, and then be very, very careful. This is going to be extremely hot since these are a metal blank. I have moved my Artesprix protective mat onto my workspace. It's going to protect my workspace from the hot metal blank, and I'll just move some of this stuff out of the way. While you are pressing, you can go ahead and just use water to clean up any surface that you used for the watercolor effect. I'm going to move this over here, and then you do not want to reuse your protective paper, especially if there is ink that transferred. Now my paper was pretty large here, so I do not see ink here, but you do want to be very careful because if sublimation ink does transfer to your heat source, that can affect future projects. Now on this side, here's my two blanks. Since my color was outside of the lines, which is perfect, it's okay to do that, I do have ink transfer to the protective paper, and you do not want to reuse this. Now you want to give these a little bit of time to cool down and then carefully remove and reveal. So I'm just going to start with the edge of the heat tape. And I have a little watercolor design that I created. Again, use whatever you think of. This video is designed to spark your creativity and provide inspiration for what you might want to work with. So here are my two designs. Something you do want to keep in mind is that it's going to mirror your image, which especially if you're working with text, you want to keep that in mind because your text would read backwards if you don't account for that. So if the camera will focus, there is my two designs. So I'm going to set those down here, remove these, and I am going to take my wine stopper, carefully peel off the protective paper that covers the adhesive, and then you can simply place this down onto the blank, center it, and then give it a good press. And then I would highly recommend letting this sit for that adhesive to grab a hold and to cure onto your wine stopper before you subject it to anything such as washing it or anything like that. I'll just take that and secure it. And then we have a double-sided wine stopper that is handmade and is a unique design. Make sure to check out the links in the description below for the supplies that were used in this video tutorial, as well as additional inspiration on the Artesprix website. Thanks for watching and have a great day.